Hey, welcome back to Mobility Project. This one's going out for my boys at the 308, you PJs, you know who you are. Good hanging out with you guys this weekend. So, one of the things we've been talking about recently on the MWOD is how do we get people mobilizing the actual position of restriction. Sometimes we can use correlate movements. I like the conjugate training. One side is distal fixed, the next time it's distal free. I certainly need to express this kind of extension from both sides of the joint effectively. We know that, for example, a movement like a jerk is really like it's open chain, it's closed chain, it's open chain, and so literally most complex human movement has a moment where I'm descending, I'm extending, there's different sections working, so that's why it's certainly working from both ends of the joint. But when we can get our athletes into the actual position where they're having problems and spending time there, we start to see radical change. For example, one of the things that constantly happens is that people are like, hey, my bottom position is in jeopardy, or I have a hard time receiving. And I'm like, well, how much time are you actually spending in your bottom position? The answer is 0. And if we looked at, through the tunnel concept, my start position, my bottom position, well, that's a place to mobilize. So if you're having a problem with your squat, let's get you spending some time in the bottom position. So we've got one of our coaches here, Steve. Go ahead and, Steve, throw your butt up against the wall. This is what we call the Olympic squat, right? So one of the things we've got going on, it's nice here, is that Steven has his back flat. So we've still prioritized spinal position first, and then he goes butt to the wall, and then he can drag his feet down, trying to get shins vertical, right? He can spread his feet wider and start to wind up that hip cap. So you can see how he's reversing. And the further he goes and drives the knees out, the less likely he is to reverse. This is one of the positions we're always kind of trying to mobilize in. This is very effective, but it doesn't really express all the corners. It gives me a really nice piece, and certainly is a good way to work on these positions. So take this out. We've had a couple people send this in. It's worked for them, and all we're going to do is hook a band up around the hip. It's a big black boy. And what I want you to do is not put this in your lumbar. What we don't need to do is create a bunch of shear in your lumbar. I want that right in that top of that sacrum, right there below that first lumbar, or that fifth lumbar segment, so that we can crank forward. Steve's going to wind that up as far as he can. Look at this, he's got feet really straight, and he can exaggerate the straightness here, and then he drops down, shoving knees out on the way down. Arrives in tension, and then he can just sit and squat in that bottom position and really work on those corners. And then go ahead and just go all the way butt to ankle. What does that feel like to you?
It's good so far.
Good so far. How's that different than that?
A little more tension here.
A little more tension.
Straighter, chest up.
Wouldn't that be a sick receiving position? Arms straight up. Oh, look at that. So you kind of can tie those ideas in. Now, Steve appropriately was like, how do we make this worse? And then he realized that he had his weight vest on earlier, working on his bottom position. Look, combine ideas. Don't be afraid to tinker. Remember, the technical term for this is, well, I'm just going to say it, it's dicking around. And what you need to do is understand that a lot of tinkering is the way that you're going to solve your own problems. Does that change things a little bit?
Definitely.
Right, you could have a big fat guy sit on your back, but that's awkward. Right, you still need to be able to mobilize in the kind of safety of the tree and the home and your friends, and having a big guy sit on your shoulders is, well, let's face it, awkward. So another idea, try this bottom position. If you're going to know that you're in the bottom of the squat today, or you know you're going to be in kind of a deep receiving position, go ahead and hook the band up here, and then you can really find. Now, one of the things that Steve can do here is as he goes side to side, he can sort of identify those corners, or if he's got a tight place, he can certainly then backtrack into that, put a ball there, mobilize for a couple minutes, undo that soft tissue restriction at that local place, and then kind of retest in that bottom position of the squat. Check it out. More ideas about tinkering. We'll see you guys tomorrow.